Naruto. Reborn as Uchiha Itachi and kill Danzo first. Chapter 31. Finally appeared, that's the complete form of Lord Han. The female leader of the team in Iwagakure opened her mouth wide and looked at the two behemoths in front of her in surprise. We have to leave here quickly. She took trembling steps and wanted to escape from the scene. Uchiha Itachi glanced at her from the corner of his eye and discovered her intention. His red Sharingan moved, and a black flame was released, directly igniting the whole body of the female leader. A scream came, and the person was burned to ashes after struggling for a few times. What a terrible technique. Maruboshi Kosuke narrowed his eyes and watched the woman turn into ashes in a few seconds, sweating all over. At this time, he was seriously injured and couldn't escape from the scene in the first time. The two behemoths were right under his feet. His situation was quite dangerous, and the aftermath of the battle could easily endanger his life. Uchiha Itachi waved his hand and directly arranged a earth escape barrier in front of him to protect him. Woo! Suddenly he found that chakra was floating everywhere in the thick fog. The five-tailed King Mu released not only steam, but also the chakra of his own tailed beast. Now Uchiha Itachi's Sharingan vision was completely blocked. He began to listen carefully with his ears. He didn't believe that the five-tailed King Mu would not make any noise during the movement. But Uchiha Itachi didn't hear any sound except the sound of air flow. What's going on? How could such a huge body disappear out of thin air? Did he remove the tailed beast and escape from the scene? Uchiha Itachi was surprised, and his expression became solemn. Just as he was thinking, with a whoosh, a huge figure suddenly appeared in front of him. The five-tailed King Mu stepped on the steam, and his body shuttled through the steam like a dolphin swimming. When he appeared in front of Uchiha Itachi, the pair of huge horns on his head suddenly attacked Uchiha Itachi. Horn break collision. The voice of King Han sounded. Uchiha Itachi was caught off guard, and the huge body of Susanoo flew backwards under the strong impact of the five-tailed King Mu, and fell heavily on a hill. The huge impact force made the hill tremble, raising a cloud of dust and rolling boulders. What's going on? It can actually swim in the air. Uchiha Itachi controlled Susanoo and got up from the ground with difficulty. His mind was full of doubts. With such a large body and no wings, how could it float in the air? He thought hard, and suddenly he remembered the introduction of the five-tailed King Mu in the ninja official book. The five-tailed King Mu is a creature fused from dolphins and horses. They adapt to life in the sea and on land. Strictly speaking, it is an amphibious creature. When living in the water, it can swim with its round body and five tails. After coming to the land, it can walk on four legs. Its special skill is to spray steam. This skill seems to be useless, but it has a different effect on it. Its steam has a very high water content and carries a huge amount of chakra. Due to its special body structure, it can float and swim in the air with the help of steam and flowing chakra. Just like swimming in water. In this case, its movements are swift, and its pure white body is extremely difficult to be discovered by the opponent under the cover of steam. Soga, that's it. Uchiha Itachi smiled. After analyzing the characteristics of the five-tailed King Emu's ability, Uchiha Itachi had a plan in mind. He quickly formed seals with both hands, and then sprayed a large amount of flames around. He wanted to use the high temperature of the flame to evaporate the water molecules in the air, thereby reducing the concentration of steam and reducing the mobility of the five-tailed King Mu. The flames swept past, and the surrounding steam began to become thinner. The five-tailed King Mu noticed the change in the environment, and its movements became less flexible. If the water molecules in the body continue to decrease like this, it won't even be able to float in the air. He can actually see through my mayfly technique. Five-tailed King Mu narrowed his eyes. His 4 feet landed on the ground, no longer floating in the steam. This time he changed his form, his muscles swelled, his body was no longer as round as a dolphin, but more like a horse. Hiss. Five-tailed King Mu made a low hoarse roar, and the sound was no longer weird. A lot of steam burst out of his body, and a horse hoof scratched the ground, dust flew, and thick smoke billowed. Do you want to attack head-on? Uchiha Itachi's expression became solemn. The next moment, the horse hoof of five-tailed King Mu stepped on the ground, his huge head drooped, showing a sharp long spike. Horn-breaking collision. He hit Uchiha Itachi again, but the difference was that this time he used steam to integrate his kinetic energy, and he could use the ground to gain power. The power of this collision will increase exponentially. Uchiha Itachi was ready for battle, not daring to be careless. He raised his left hand to control Susanoo, and a huge shield appeared in front of Susanoo. 8-foot mirror. The artifact known as the strongest defense. Dang. When the strongest tailed beast weapon Mu Wang's head horn hit the strongest defensive divine weapon 8-foot mirror, it made a deafening sound. The huge impact force made Uchiha Itachi's Susanoo retreat 1,000 meters before it barely stopped. However, this fierce attack did not leave any traces on the 8-foot mirror. Sure enough, the defense of the strongest escape was slightly better. Unscathed under such a strong impact. Five-tailed Mu Wang shook his huge head, and the collision just now made golden stars appear on his head. Since physical attacks are useless, I can only use that trick. Five-tailed Mu Wang thought to himself. Then he raised his huge head. Black and blue chakras gathered in his mouth. The five-tailed king finally took out his best trick, the tailed beast jade. Such a high density of chakra gathering, is this the tailed beast ball? Uchiha Itachi muttered to himself as he watched the tailed beast chakra gathering in the mouth of the five-tailed king. Hee. He smiled. That's good, let me learn it on the spot. Uchiha Itachi used the Sharingan to observe the changes in the chakra gathered by the five-tailed king, and he used the Sharingan's ability to replicate to analyze the chakra properties. So that's it, is the black-blue ratio 8:2. A hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. Then he mobilized the three-tailed chakra in his body to gather in the palm of Susanoo, and a huge tailed beast ball appeared. Success. I'm such a genius. Uchiha Itachi was full of excitement. The five-tailed king on the other side had already accumulated power successfully. He roared, "Go to hell." The tailed beast ball in its mouth was like a huge cannonball, blasting towards Uchiha Itachi. Come on. Uchiha Itachi shouted, controlling Susanoo to throw the tailed beast ball in his hand straight out. The two-tailed beast jades collided in midair, bursting out dazzling light and huge shock waves. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the surrounding land was blown beyond recognition. Uchiha Itachi blocked the 8-foot mirror in front of Susanoo to block the shock wave of the explosion. Five-tailed Mu Wang retreated dozens of steps under the impact of the explosion, with a hint of surprise in his eyes. This guy even knows the tailed beast jade, and he can use the chakra of the tailed beast without the tailed beast transformation. How did he do it? A wave of waves surged in his heart. Uchiha Itachi looked at the five-tailed Mu Wang, his mouth slightly raised, and he said, "If your strength is like this, then I can only say sorry, this is the end." As soon as he finished speaking, Susanoo's right hand transformed into a 10-fist sword. Then he swept out with a sword, and a huge sword energy flew towards the five-tailed Mu Wang. Not good. Five-tailed Mu Wang secretly said in his heart that it was not good, and he moved his horse's hoof and was about to escape. But at this time, 4 chains appeared under his feet, binding his limbs. What? Sealing technique. Five-tailed King Mu was shocked. Now it was restricted from dodging, and the sword light came and directly cut a big hole in his body. Five-tailed King Mu howled in pain, and a lot of blood gushed out of the wound. Uchiha Itachi did not give five-tailed King Mu a chance to breathe, and controlled Susanoo to press forward step by step. When he approached five-tailed King Mu, he stabbed the 10-fisted sword in his hand into his body without hesitation. Five-tailed King Mu's struggling body stopped twisting, and his consciousness had sunk into the illusion of the 10-fisted sword. Finally, the five-tailed King Mu succeeded in capturing the five-tailed. The next step is to absorb his chakra. Uchiha Itachi said to himself. He quickly formed seals with both hands, and the 8-diagram seal in his body was opened. Then the 10-fisted sword slowly introduced the absorbed tailed beast chakra into his body. Intense pain was produced with the inflow of chakra. Uchiha Itachi still chose to divide the chakra of the five-tailed king into yin and yang this time. Although he had the experience last time, the process of absorbing the five-tailed king's chakra this time was more dangerous. On the one hand, the seal was opened, and the three-tailed king was at risk of breaking free from the seal at any time, so Uchiha Itachi had to divide some of his energy to use the power of the Sharingan to control the three-tailed king. On the other hand, becoming the Jinchuriki of two-tailed beasts at the same time, strictly speaking, 2.5. This operation can be said to be unprecedented. Although in the anime, Naruto finally got some of the power of the nine-tailed beasts. But that was when the tailed beasts recognized Naruto and took the initiative to leave their power. The current situation of Uchiha Itachi is different. He forcibly accommodated two-tailed beasts in the 8 diagrams seal, and the two chakras are easy to repel each other. One careless move may cause Uchiha Itachi to explode and die. Time passed by minute, and after a while, the true body of the five-tailed king appeared in the 8 diagrams seal. It was tied up with chakra chains and locked in a cage, facing the three-tailed beast. When it gradually regained consciousness as a tailed beast, it saw the three-tailed beast in front of it with a face full of shock. Isobu. Why are you here? Five-tailed King Mu asked the three-tailed beast loudly. But at this time, the three-tailed beast did not respond as if it did not hear its call. Its huge single eye showed the three Magatama form of the Sharingan, and it was obvious that the illusion that Uchiha Itachi used on him had not been lifted. Hey! Speak! Five-tailed King Mu saw that the three-tailed Isobu had no response, and began to get more and more anxious. It tried to break free from the shackles of the chakra chains, but to no avail. It roared loudly. The next moment, Uchiha Itachi's figure suddenly appeared in front of it. He looked at five-tailed King Mu with indifferent eyes and said, "Don't waste your energy. You can't break free from your restraints." Five-tailed King Mu glared at Uchiha Itachi and roared, "What do you want to do to us? Listen, five-tailed, from now on I will borrow some of your power, whether you agree or not." Uchiha Itachi said coldly. Human. Five-tailed King Mu gritted his teeth, his eyes full of unwillingness and resentment. You are forcibly depriving me of my freedom. I will never succumb to your tyranny. As he said that, his huge body twisted again. Really? Uchiha Itachi smiled, his Sharingan moved, and the powerful pupil technique immediately calmed the five-tailed King Mu. Just like the three-tailed, be quiet for a while. Uchiha Itachi said lightly. When everything was over, Uchiha Itachi regained his mind. At this time, Han was half dead after half of the tailed beast's power was extracted, and he was sleeping on the ground. Uchiha Itachi took out a space scroll, and the space power was released from the scroll, absorbing Han's body into the scroll. After doing all this, Uchiha Itachi turned around and was about to leave, and the voice of Maruboshi Kosuke not far away called him. Hey, Uchiha boy, I'm not dead yet. Maruboshi Kosuke's old voice sounded behind him. Oh, I almost forgot. Uchiha Itachi patted his head, turned back and removed the barrier in front of Maruboshi Kosuke. He didn't know medical skills, so he could only simply bandage the old man's wound. After doing all this, he turned around and was about to leave. Maruboshi Kosuke's voice called him again. Young man, your Konoha forehead guard has a scratch from a kunai, which is a sign of a traitor. You must be Uchiha Itachi. Quote. Uchiha Itachi heard this and paused for a moment but did not answer. Maruboshi Kosuke saw this and his old voice sounded again. Why did you save me? Uchiha Itachi looked back at him and said seriously, I know your story. Konoha needs an old man like you to spread the will of fire. After that, he disappeared into the night without looking back. Soga, that's it. Maruboshi Kosuke looked at his disappearing back and muttered to himself. At the Akatsuki base, a group of members stood in the cave, waiting for Uchiha Itachi to return. The stone door slowly opened, and Uchiha Itachi walked into the stone chamber expressionlessly. You are late, Itachi. Get ready now. Tendo Pain looked at the slowly approaching figure and said. Hehe. Orochimaru's voice rang out from the side. 1 against 7 Itachi, I thought you had defected from the organization after killing Kakuzu. I didn't expect you to make a big move, it's really a surprise. Sorry, Uchiha Itachi responded coldly, I was delayed a little in the process of capturing the tailed beast. And Orochimaru, Kakuzu was not killed by me, he was too arrogant, he didn't understand the other party's immortal body and acted easily, and ended up dying at the hands of that kind of character. He. Orochimaru smiled darkly, no need to explain to me, it doesn't matter who killed that guy, I haven't been used to him for a long time. Let's talk about small talk later, finish the next work first. Tendo Pain interrupted Orochimaru's words, He glanced at Orochimaru, and said with some dissatisfaction, and Orochimaru, Kakuzu is also a companion of the Akatsuki organization, don't say that to him. Hehe, I'm sorry. Although Orochimaru said this, there was no apology on his face. Tendo Pain ignored him and formed seals with his hands. Summoning technique. The next moment, smoke and dust rolled, and a huge outer path demon rose from the ground. Uchiha Itachi looked at the summoned outer path demon. At this time, the 10 eyes on the top of the demon's head were closed, which meant that it had not absorbed the power of any tailed beast. Is this the container of the tailed beast? Uchiha Itachi muttered to himself. He took out the space scroll and threw it on the ground, then released the body of the 5 tails Jinchuriki. Okay, let's gather. Tendo Pain said lightly. A group of Akatsuki members stood up and jumped onto the 10 fingers of the outer path demon. Okay, let's start. Tendo Pain took the lead in forming seals. The outer path demon's huge mouth sealed by chains opened, revealing terrifying fangs. Next, we will use the 9 seals of the Phantom Dragon. Everyone should concentrate. Tendo Pain instructed. Yes. Everyone nodded and answered, and they formed seals at the same time. BGM sounded here. Sealing technique. 9 sealings of the Phantom Dragon. A ray of light came out from the giant mouth of the outer path demon statue, and 9 giant dragons formed by chakra crawled out of the mouth of the outer path demon statue. They fell together with their fangs and claws, biting the body of the 5-tailed Jinchuriki Han. Ah! A low groan came from Han's mouth, and his body was dragged into the air and wrapped in invisible energy. At this time, his eyes were white and his mouth was wide open. The red-tailed beast chakra drilled out from his mouth, nose, eyes, and ears, and gathered in the giant mouth of the outer path demon statue. Time passed by minute, and after dozens of minutes of extraction, the tailed beast chakra in Han's body was finally drained. One of the eyes of the outer path demon statue slowly opened, its pupil emerged, and it was covered with bloodshot, as if it was coming to life. It's over. Tendo Pain narrowed his eyes and spoke slowly. Arya, this job is really hard. My shoulders are sore. Orochimaru twisted his neck and made a crackling sound. Tendo Pain looked around at everyone and said, everyone has worked hard. Go back and rest. Everyone retreated, and Uchiha Itachi followed their steps. Just as he was about to walk out of the stone chamber, Tendo Pain called him and Orochimaru. Itachi, Orochimaru, wait a minute. Huh. The two were puzzled and turned back. Tendo Pain looked at them and said, Biwa Juzo will carry out the task of escorting the 4th Mizukage back to the village. You and Orochimaru will form a temporary team in the next period of time. Okay, I have no problem. Uchiha Itachi nodded and spoke indifferently. Orochimaru on the side narrowed his eyes and a sinister smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The next day, the sun was shining and the weather was clear. Uchiha Itachi and Orochimaru walked slowly on a long mountain staircase. Uchiha Itachi was in front, and Orochimaru followed behind. As they walked, Orochimaru in the back suddenly said, Hee. 1 against 7, Itachi, to be honest, the corner was killed by you. That guy's earth resentment technique is quite tricky, your strength is really not simple. Uchiha Itachi was stunned for a moment, but he did not stop. He said coldly, I have already said that the guy did not die in my hands. Really? Orochimaru looked at Uchiha Itachi's back and showed a sinister smile. Forget it, it doesn't matter. Do you know why I left Konoha? Why? Hee. Orochimaru licked his lips with his long tongue. Do you know what eternal life is, Itachi? I have been looking for the way to immortality. So I did a lot of human experiments in Konoha, which was not allowed by the 3rd generation, so I left the village. Quote. He paused. Among the forbidden techniques of Konoha, there is a forbidden technique that can make people gain eternal life. That requires constantly changing new bodies. And Itachi, I have been paying attention to you since you were very young, your unparalleled Sharingan is really fascinating. Quote. As soon as he finished speaking, a giant python suddenly emerged from his sleeves. The long snake extended from behind Uchiha Itachi and instantly wrapped around Uchiha Itachi's body. Hee. Orochimaru showed an evil smile, and the snake spit out snakes on Uchiha Itachi's head. Itachi, I need your body, let me achieve eternal perfect life. Quote. Hee. Uchiha Itachi sneered and said lightly, In the final analysis, this is just a matter of your desire. Do you deserve my body? Quote. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned his head to look at Orochimaru, and the pair of scarlet Sharingan instantly became sharp, emitting a frightening light. Orochimaru was frightened by his eyes, and a trace of fear arose in his heart. But it was too late. At that moment, the whole space spun, and the giant python on Uchiha Itachi disappeared. At this time, Uchiha Itachi was still in front of Orochimaru, staring at Orochimaru with the scarlet Sharingan, like the god of death, which made Orochimaru shudder. But Orochimaru was fixed in place and could not move. I didn't expect that I was actually hit by the immobilization technique. Orochimaru's expression became very ugly, and cold sweat ran down his body. What a powerful pupil power, it's perfect. He gritted his teeth and stretched out his arm tremblingly. The next moment, Orochimaru gritted his teeth and cut off his left hand directly. Blood flowed in an instant, and the huge pain made him break free from the restraints of the immobilization technique. Uchiha Itachi calmly took out the kunai and said coldly, Orochimaru, all your methods are ineffective in front of my eyes. You are so arrogant. Orochimaru panted. Really? Uchiha Itachi smiled. Then how should I deal with you? Kill you immediately, or keep him for use. The kunai in his hand was aimed at Orochimaru's eyebrows, and Orochimaru was shocked. 1 against 7, Itachi. Spare my life. He shouted nervously. Go away, leave the Akatsuki organization. Uchiha Itachi put away the kunai in his hand and turned away. He wanted to save Orochimaru's life, because only through his impure world reincarnation could he release the 4th Hokage and get the other half of the Nine Tails power. The next day, in the Akatsuki base, everyone gathered together to discuss Orochimaru's defection. Orochimaru betrayed the organization and ran away. Uchiha Itachi, tell me what happened at that time. The cold voice of Tendo Pain sounded. Everyone looked at Uchiha Itachi and waited for his explanation. Uchiha Itachi looked around calmly, and seeing the sharp eyes of everyone, he answered coldly, Orochimaru has learned the art of immortality. In order to stay young, he must change his body every once in a while, so he fell in love with my body. I see, I knew that was unreliable. He actually put his personal affairs before the organization. The old voice of the Red Sand Scorpion was full of disdain and anger. Although I don't want to let Orochimaru escape, but now the members are short of manpower, his affairs can only be put on hold for the time being. Tendo Pain said lightly. Senior. Me. Hearing that there were not enough members, the disguised A-Fei raised his hand excitedly and said, please let me join the organization. I will do my best for the organization until I die. Kid, get out of the way. Scorpion scolded dissatisfiedly, and he continued, leave Orochimaru to me. His subordinate Kabuto is similar to my puppet doll. I will find his hiding place soon. No, don't be so anxious. Tendo Pain refused. Akatsuki has always acted in two people. I have already figured out your partner. Let's talk about it after he joins. Can you let me go? Uchiha Itachi volunteered, this is because of me, let me make a conclusion. He had a plan in mind, and he could perform the Sharingan transplant surgery after subduing Orochimaru. 1 against 7, Itachi. Tendo Pain looked at Uchiha Itachi. He was silent for a while and finally compromised. Okay, in this case, then you and Scorpion will temporarily form a team. Orochimaru is usually very insidious, you must pay attention to safety and cannot tolerate losses. The continuous loss of troops and generals made Tendo Pain cautious. I understand. Uchiha Itachi nodded and replied. He turned to look at Scorpion, please give me more advice, senior. Hee. Scorpion of the Red Sand laughed lowly, come with me. A few days later, Uchiha Itachi and Scorpion were ready to go. The two left the base of Akatsuki and set out on the journey to find Orochimaru. Scorpion led the way along the way. After a period of travel, Scorpion brought Uchiha Itachi to an intelligence point. There was a stone statue standing here. Scorpion of the Red Sand crawled to the stone statue and found the switch. The mouth of the stone statue slowly opened, and a scroll was placed inside. Is this information about Orochimaru? Uchiha Itachi asked in confusion as he watched Scorpion take out the scroll from the stone statue. Hee. Scorpion of the Red Sand smiled. At this time, he appeared as a puppet, the scarlet flowing amber, so his voice was a little old and rough. He said, Orochimaru's subordinate Kabuto was hit by my puppet technique, so I can control his actions. This is the latest information he left about Orochimaru. Soga, that's it. Uchiha Itachi nodded, but he knew that Kabuto deliberately hit Scorpion's technique in order to be a double agent for Orochimaru and Akatsuki. Scorpion opened the scroll and took a look. There was only an address written inside. The Great Sand Dunes of the East. I see. That's a barren land. He actually hid there. Isn't that your hometown? Don't say that. People there don't recognize me. But it would be great if it was that place. Scorpion lit the scroll in his hand, and it turned into ashes in an instant. The scene changed, and the two came to a desert. This is the Great Sand Dunes of the East in the Land of Sand. Due to the harsh climate here and the constant sandstorms, there are almost no people living in this area. Uchiha Itachi and Scorpion wore hats. They looked at a cave not far ahead and stopped. That's Orochimaru's base ahead. Scorpion said lightly. Yes. Uchiha Itachi nodded. Should we sneak in quietly? Or should we use detonating tags to raise the place to the ground to force him to show up for safety? We don't know if he is in there yet, so don't alert him yet, just wait for the information from Kabuto. Scorpion replied. But as soon as he finished speaking, many poisonous snakes suddenly crawled out from the sand. Those poisonous snakes quickly approached Uchiha Itachi and Scorpion, spitting out their tongues and exuding a dangerous breath. Uchiha Itachi's eyes condensed, and he quickly took out his kunai, ready to deal with these uninvited guests. Scorpion controlled the Harugoku and sprayed a large number of poisonous needles from his mouth, shooting at those poisonous snakes and hitting them accurately. However, there are so many venomous snakes. After the venomous snakes in the front row died, the venomous snakes in the back row fled in all directions. It's sand snakes. They can't survive in such a harsh environment. How can there be so many sand snakes gathered here? Uchiha Itachi frowned as he looked at the bodies of the dead venomous snakes. This is the work of Orochimaru. It seems that we have been exposed. Scorpion's eyes became sharp. He looked at the venomous snakes fleeing to the cave not far away and said lightly, let's go. Yeah. Uchiha Itachi nodded and followed Scorpion's pace. The two walked slowly and soon came to the entrance of the cave. At this time, Orochimaru's figure had been waiting for them here for a long time. Watching the two of them coming, Orochimaru showed a sinister smile. He said, Itachi, you are here. Did pain send you to kill me? Scorpion stared at him with cold eyes. You traitor, I will kill you without hesitation. Oh, Orochimaru smiled disdainfully, can you do such a thing? After all, you are just a traitor to the hidden sand village. You. Scorpion's eyes became colder. I will kill you with my own hands. As he said this, he took out a scroll with a 3 written on it. The next moment, a dazzling light shone from the scroll, and the puppet of the third cage was summoned by him. Soga, the third cage. Orochimaru smiled at the appearance of the puppet, and he formed a seal with his hands, and a coffin emerged from the ground. The coffin also had a 3 engraved on it. Then the coffin opened, and a figure exactly like Scorpion's puppet walked out from it. What? This is. Scorpion widened his eyes, unable to believe it. The man who walked out of the coffin had dark eyes and said, Scorpion, you dare to make me a puppet. Orochimaru, what's wrong with this guy? Scorpion's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief. He. Orochimaru laughed gloomily. I used a forbidden technique to revive the third cage you killed. Another impure world reincarnation. It won't be the same as last time, will it? I want to kill that scorpion with my own hands. The third cage who was resurrected by the impure world reincarnation interrupted. Don't complain, this time the completion of the technique is higher than last time, and you will definitely have a good fight. Orochimaru said, inserting a kunai tied with talisman paper into the head of the third cage. A burst of white smoke came out of the body of the third cage who was resurrected by the impure world reincarnation, and the eyes of the third cage instantly resurrected from the taboo of death. Well, let's see, which one is more powerful, your puppet technique or my impure world reincarnation technique? Orochimaru said with a smile. Scorpion's eyes became sinister and vicious. The next moment, the resurrected third cage made hand seals. Sand Iron Rain. Countless black metal powders emerged from the third cage's body, and they gathered into thin needles and stabbed at Scorpion's body at a high speed. Seeing this, Scorpion used the chakra filaments in his hand to control the puppet third cage to spit out a piece of iron sand. The black iron sand gathered into blocks to form a shield, blocking Scorpion's body. Uchiha Itachi on the side summoned a falcon and flew into the air to avoid the attack of the iron needles. It's not over yet. Seeing this, the resurrected third cage controlled the iron needles to bypass the shield and directly pierce Scorpion's body. But this attack did not work. When the iron needles fell on the Hirako of Hirako, a clang clang clang, metal collision sound was heard. The shell of Scorpion's Hirako is solid, and ordinary ninjutsu cannot cause damage to it. But at this time, Orochimaru smiled, "Scorpion, you are careless. If the puppet enters the iron sand, it will be unable to move." As soon as he finished speaking, the third cage waved his hands, and countless iron needles that fell around Scorpion suddenly decomposed into fine iron sand and floated around Scorpion. "Stinky snake, it's not your turn to explain the puppet to me." Scorpion cursed at Orochimaru. Then the floating iron sand fell on Scorpion's Filiuhu. Seeing this, Scorpion dived directly into the sand. The next moment he emerged from another direction, his 10 fingers moved slightly, and the chakra threads in his fingers controlled the puppet third cage to rush towards the reincarnated third cage. A mechanical cutting sound rang out, and the puppet third cage unfolded 2 cutting wheels and went to the face of the reincarnated third cage. With a few, swish, sounds, the body of the third generation cage who was resurrected by the impure world reincarnation was cut into several pieces. Scorpion looked at Orochimaru and said coldly, "It's your turn next, stinky snake." Orochimaru smiled and said, "It's not over yet." As soon as he finished speaking, the body of the third generation cage that was cut into several pieces quickly healed, and suddenly, it appeared in front of Scorpion without any injury. "What?" Scorpion narrowed his eyes and looked serious. Orochimaru smiled and said, "My forbidden technique is immortal, which is also a form of eternal life. Compared with your puppet, this is a real work of art. You actually compared him to my masterpiece. It's unforgivable. I don't believe he won't die. Only puppets are eternal." Scorpion said angrily. His 10 fingers shook flexibly again, and the puppet third generation cage condensed a lot of iron sand under his control. The iron sand was reorganized into sharp spears. Scorpion waved his hands, and countless spears stabbed at the body of the third cage. "Scorpion, have you forgotten that I can also control iron sand at will?" The reincarnated third cage looked at the black spears stabbing at him and spoke indifferently. The next moment, the spear suddenly stopped when it approached him. The reincarnated third cage took control of the spear, and with a wave of his left hand, the black spear turned around and attacked Scorpion. "Iron wall!" Scorpion shouted coldly, and the puppet third cage spit out a lot of iron sand, which formed a thick iron wall and blocked them. Dang dang dang. The spear hit the iron wall, making a sound of metal collision, and sparks flew. Fire style. Great fireball technique. At this moment, Uchiha Itachi seized the opportunity in the air and directly hit the reincarnated third cage with a fireball. The fireball fell and exploded with a bang. The fireball directly burned the body of the third cage to ashes. Uchiha Itachi succeeded in his sneak attack, but it caused Scorpion's dissatisfaction. He said to Uchiha Itachi in a cold voice, "Itachi, you don't need to do anything, I want to kill him myself. If I can kill him once, I can kill him a second time." "All right." Uchiha Itachi stood behind Falcon and spread his hands helplessly. The body of the third cage, which was burned to ashes, healed again and recovered intact. He. Orochimaru laughed coldly. "I said, he is immortal. After you die, I will revive you like him and let you have an immortal body." "What a joke, stinky snake, how about trying this trick?" Scorpion said, controlling the puppet third cage to gather a lot of iron sand, and the surrounding iron elements were sucked in at once. A lot of iron sand condensed into a huge cylinder in the air, floating in the air ready to attack at any time. Seeing this, the third cage who was reborn from the impure world reincarnation also condensed iron sand in the same way, and a triangular iron block condensed and opposed the cylindrical iron block in the air. Go. Quote. The two men waved their hands at the same time to control their respective iron blocks. The two iron blocks collided in the air, making a deafening sound. Uchiha Itachi covered his ears helplessly and sighed softly. He is really stubborn. The opponent's impure world reincarnation is immortal and has infinite chakra. How can you afford to fight like this? Forget it, you two continue to fight each other. I'm going to meet Orochimaru. Uchiha Itachi said and shot several kunai at Orochimaru, and the kunai fell at Orochimaru's feet. Huh. Orochimaru was stunned, looked up at the sky, and looked at Uchiha Itachi. Uchiha Itachi waved at him and said loudly, Hey! Orochimaru, don't you want my body? How about we go over there for a fight? It's too noisy here, and my ears are almost deafened. Quote. Orochimaru's mouth drew a weird smile. Interesting, it seems that I have to get your body in advance. Quote. After suffering from Uchiha Itachi's illusion last time, he made full preparations. He deliberately let Kabuto expose his hiding place, just to lure Uchiha Itachi to come. This time he is confident that he can take down Uchiha Itachi. Tisk! Uchiha Itachi looked at his shameless appearance and flew west directly on the falcon. You can't run away, Itachi. Orochimaru bit his finger and made seals with both hands. Summoning technique. A giant python was summoned by him. He stood on the giant snake and chased Uchiha Itachi. You too. Scorpion looked at the two receding backs, and a trace of anger flashed in his eyes. But at this time, he was fighting with the reincarnated third-generation Kazekage, and had no time to care about other things. Orochimaru stood on the giant python, which was flying fast in the desert in the direction of Uchiha Itachi. This time, he summoned a green snake, which was several times faster than ordinary snakes and could keep up with the speed of Uchiha Itachi's falcon. After they chased for dozens of miles in the desert, Orochimaru finally couldn't hold back. Uchiha Itachi, it's time to stop. Orochimaru licked his tongue and then launched an attack. Shadow Snake Hand. With a hiss, several pythons with thick arms flew out from under his sleeves. The pythons stretched infinitely in the air and flew towards Uchiha Itachi. They were extremely fast and soon caught the falcon flying in the air. The long giant pythons squirmed on the falcon's body and soon wrapped around the falcon's body. The next moment, the giant pythons opened their mouths and showed their fangs. They bit towards the falcon's body, and the venom was poured into the falcon's body along with the fangs. Cry. Falcon cried out in pain. Seeing this, Uchiha Itachi took out a long knife. He jumped off falcon and rushed towards Orochimaru along the bodies of the long snakes. Interesting. Orochimaru sneered. He controlled the long snakes on his arms, and countless snake heads and bodies grew on the long snakes again, directly binding and entangling Uchiha Itachi. Success. Orochimaru smiled excitedly. He pulled hard, and the long snakes in Uchiha Itachi's body were quickly retracted. He. 1 against 7, Itachi, you are really careless. Don't worry, I won't kill you now, you are my perfect container. Orochimaru looked at the bound Uchiha Itachi and said with a smile. Although Uchiha Itachi's body was bound by the snakes, he did not show any panic. He stared at Orochimaru with a calm look in his eyes, and said lightly, Orochimaru, have you forgotten the lesson before? I said that all your ninjutsu will not work in front of my eyes. As soon as Uchiha Itachi finished speaking, his body entangled by the long snake suddenly turned into a crow and scattered. Then Uchiha Itachi was seen standing behind Orochimaru, with a kunai against Orochimaru's waist. It's not that simple. Orochimaru did not panic. He screamed, ah! His mouth suddenly opened wide, a pair of white hands opened his mouth, and Orochimaru crawled out of his original body. Shedding skin. It's really disgusting to watch. Uchiha Itachi muttered to himself as he looked at the scene in front of him. At this time, Orochimaru, who had just shed his skin, was covered with sticky liquid. He looked at Uchiha Itachi, who had no expression on his face, and the red Sharingan really made him envious. What a perfect eye. Orochimaru sighed and said, after I lost to you last time, I have been concentrating on studying ways to deal with the Sharingan. Do you know how snakes hunt? 1 against 7, Itachi. Uchiha Itachi looked at him coldly and said disdainfully, if you want to say it, just say it. Orochimaru was not angry when he heard it, but smiled and said, Hee. Your Sharingan needs to look at people to activate illusions. When hunting, snakes rely on the heat emitted by prey to determine their location. In other words, as long as I block my retina, your pupil technique 9 will not work on me. And it is easy for me to capture your actions through the perception of snakes. As Orochimaru said this, a protective film appeared on his eyes, which could block vision and prevent the illusion of the Sharingan from affecting him. Is this the method you studied? Uchiha Itachi sneered, and said with some disdain, what if I say that you are not my opponent even if I don't use the power of the Mangekyo? As he said this, his red Sharingan went out, and the Sharingan turned into an ordinary eye. Orochimaru's face changed slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. He said, you are so arrogant. It seems that you really look down on me. In this case, I will not show mercy. As soon as Orochimaru finished speaking, he spit out his long tongue. Then countless small snakes crawled out of his mouth. The densely packed small snakes were countless, and in an instant, Uchiha Itachi's whole body was covered. Uchiha Itachi stood there calmly, and the next moment, only a stream of green smoke came out of his body. The group of snakes covering him seemed to be burned by high temperature, slowly turned into ashes, and fell off his body. When the group of snakes covering him disappeared, Orochimaru discovered it. At this time, Uchiha Itachi was covered with red chakra, and there were several tails swaying behind him. This is the power of the tailed beast. Orochimaru widened his eyes in surprise, his face full of disbelief. When did you become a Jinchuriki? I don't need to explain this to you, if Yubani can consider telling you in this state. Uchiha Itachi said coldly. Then he continued, the venue here is too small to launch a full-scale battle. Let's change places. As he said, he used the chakra of the tailed beast to condense into a sharp claw. One claw fell on the top of the green snake's head and directly pierced the snake's head. The huge pain made the green snake's body twist wildly. After struggling for a few times, it banged and turned into a puff of green smoke and disappeared. As the green snake's body disappeared, Orochimaru and Uchiha Itachi fell into the sand. The two staggered 2 steps and stood firm. Soga, that's how it is. You can easily control the power of the tailed beast. No wonder you are so confident. Orochimaru looked at Uchiha Itachi in front of him, and the smile on his lips became more and more weird. Uchiha Itachi did not indulge him, and the tailed beast chakra in his body rioted again, emitting a powerful shock wave. Looking at such violent energy, cold sweat broke out on Orochimaru's face, and he stretched out his hand to block the blowing airflow. He looked at Uchiha Itachi, and from his figure, he seemed to see 2 tailed beasts roaring in front of him. Interesting, there are actually 2 tailed beasts. Orochimaru sighed softly. Then, Uchiha Itachi shouted loudly, and a powerful shock wave attacked Orochimaru. With a bang, Orochimaru was blown away by the shock wave 100 meters away. His body was like a water float on the sand dune, and he stopped after rolling and sliding for a long distance. At this time, Orochimaru was upside down with half of his body stuck in the sand, looking very embarrassed. He crawled out of the sand with difficulty, then opened his mouth again, and crawled out of his dilapidated body again. A new body crawled on the sand dune. Is this the power of Jinchuriki? The shock wave of chakra alone can achieve such destructive power. You are more and more attractive to me, Itachi. Orochimaru's eyes flashed with greed, and he stared at Uchiha Itachi closely, as if he was looking at a rare treasure. How about trying this trick, the 10,000 snakes formation? Quote. He let out a strange cry and spit out a large number of long snakes from his mouth. After the densely packed long snakes crawled out of his mouth, they continued to grow larger and larger. The long snakes quickly crawled towards Uchiha Itachi. During the crawling process, they kept splitting in number and swarmed like a tide. It's this disgusting move again. It's really disgusting. Uchiha Itachi looked at the densely packed snake tide and his scalp numbed. He controlled the tailed beast chakra to turn into a huge fist, and smashed the fist towards the snake tide with a rumbling sound. Under the huge shock wave of the fist, a group of big snakes in the front row instantly turned into ashes. It's not over yet. 10,000 snake blades. Orochimaru shouted. The big snakes in the back row opened their mouths one after another, spitting out long sharp blades from their mouths, and countless snake heads swam with long swords in their mouths. Stabbed towards Uchiha Itachi. Ah! I can't stand it. Uchiha Itachi almost vomited when he saw this disgusting and horrifying scene. He roared, and the chakra on his body changed again. The color of the translucent tailed beast coat gradually deepened. The next moment, Uchiha Itachi turned into a small tailed beast. Disappear. Uchiha Itachi opened his mouth and spurted out a huge shock wave from his mouth, and the snake tide turned into ashes in an instant. The wind swept, and Orochimaru was cut off one hand and one foot under this violent shock wave, looking very embarrassed. Huff, huff, huff. Orochimaru stood up with difficulty, panting heavily. As expected of a Jinchuriki, the destructive power is really amazing. He lowered his head and opened his mouth again. He shed his skin successfully again, and his new body had all the limbs intact. The recovery power of the molting technique has reached its limit. I have to be extremely careful next time. Orochimaru muttered to himself. Not far away, Uchiha Itachi has transformed into the second state of the tailed beast, and the bones of the tailed beast have grown on his body. Is this the tailed beast? It's like a shot of cardio tonic, and the blood in my body is boiling, but this power doesn't seem to be that difficult to control. Uchiha Itachi looked at the changes in his body and muttered to himself. This time he wanted to use Orochimaru to test the combat power in the tailed beast state and adapt to this violent power in advance. Try this trick, Uchiha Itachi said as he stretched out his hands and inserted them into the ground. The claws transformed by the tailed beast's chakra penetrated through the ground and directly pierced under Orochimaru's feet. What? Orochimaru was startled. He looked down and saw a pair of giant red claws coming out of the ground. Orochimaru reacted and dodged the attack. He kept dodging and moving on the sand dunes. Uchiha Itachi saw this and controlled the chakra claws to extend and change, and kept chasing Orochimaru. When the huge claws attacked Orochimaru's face, Orochimaru slid on the ground and stopped. Shadow Snake Hand. Go! He shouted, and a giant python sprang out from his sleeves. The giant python opened its mouth and wrapped around the chakra claws. But when the giant python's body just touched the chakra claws, it turned into ashes in an instant. What? Orochimaru was shocked. Seeing the huge claws coming towards him, he had to abandon another skin and shed his skin directly to get away. This time his new body was half human and half snake, with the body of a snake below the waist. This form made him extremely fast, and he kept moving like a snake on the sand, moving quickly towards Uchiha Itachi. All of a sudden, he rushed to Uchiha Itachi at a very fast speed. He punched Uchiha Itachi in the face, and this heavy blow directly broke the skull growing on Uchiha Itachi's head. Although this punch was domineering, Uchiha Itachi's body was not repelled. He controlled the chakra of the tailed beast and grew a clone on the back of his body. The clone waved its claws and cut Orochimaru in half with one claw. Ah! Orochimaru screamed, and his upper body floated in the air. But the strange thing was that the bloody scene did not appear. Dozens of small snakes suddenly grew out of his two broken sections of the body, and the small snakes connected and entangled with each other, and Orochimaru's upper and lower halves were directly reconnected and healed. This guy's vitality is stronger than cockroaches. Uchiha Itachi looked at the scene in front of him and exclaimed. This creepy scene appeared in front of Uchiha Itachi at a close distance, making him feel nauseous. In order to avoid nausea for the next meal, he had to step aside. After reconnecting his body, Orochimaru's lower body began to shrink, and the long snake body turned into 2 legs. 1 against 7, Itachi, you really surprised me. You can use the chakra of the tailed beast perfectly and not be eroded by the tailed beast. Orochimaru looked at Uchiha Itachi, who was like a small tailed beast in front of him, and couldn't help but praise. Stop talking nonsense, I don't believe I can't kill you. Uchiha Itachi roared. Then countless blue and black chakra balls appeared around his body. These chakra balls continued to combine and condense in front of Uchiha Itachi, forming a small tailed beast ball. Such a high density of chakra gathering, this is going to be tricky. Orochimaru looked at the constantly condensing tailed beast jade, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He narrowed his eyes slightly and quickly pulled away. If I get hit by this move, I will definitely die. He thought to himself. Then he bit his finger and quickly formed seals with both hands. At the moment when Uchiha Itachi's tailed beast Jade was launched, he launched the summoning technique. Ninjutsu Third Uncle, come and open the door. Triple Rashomon. Dang dang dang. 3 iron doors carved with ghost faces rose from the ground and directly blocked Orochimaru. The tailed beast Jade came quickly, and the violent energy directly blasted the triple Rashomon into pieces. Don't look at this as just a small tailed beast Jade, its power can easily smash a small mountain. Orochimaru lay on the ground with his 4 legs up in the air under the huge shock wave, and his whole body was covered with burn marks. Even the triple Rashomon only changed its trajectory. This power is so terrifying. Orochimaru sighed secretly while lying on the ground. Uchiha Itachi stood up and walked towards him slowly. He looked at Orochimaru calmly. He said calmly, "How is it, Orochimaru, are you convinced?" He. Orochimaru laughed gloomily, his head buried in the sand and his expression could not be seen. It's not over yet, 1 against 7, Itachi. Orochimaru's voice came from the ground. Huh. Uchiha Itachi was stunned, and suddenly found something strange. The next moment, under his feet, a long sword sprang out from the sand and stabbed directly into his chest. Ah! A strange cry came, and Orochimaru's head and the long sword sprang out from the sand. His neck kept stretching, pointing Uchiha Itachi's body directly into the sky. When his neck stretched to 100 meters away, he bit the long sword and swung it down. Uchiha Itachi's body was stabbed by the long sword and fell from a height of 100 meters, and hit the bottom heavily. The huge inertia kept pushing Uchiha Itachi forward, and it stopped only when his body hit a small stone mountain on a sand dune. Orochimaru's head was suspended 100 meters in the air, and he bit the hundreds of meters long sword and kept stabbing Uchiha Itachi's abdomen. But at this time, Uchiha Itachi's body was protected by the thick coat of the tailed beast, and the long sword could not hurt him at all. Even the Kusanagi sword can't break the defense. Orochimaru exclaimed. Uchiha Itachi was also scared and broke into a cold sweat at this time. I was careless and didn't dodge. I almost thought I was going to die. The defense of this tailed beast coat is really good. Uchiha Itachi said, stretched out his hand and pushed hard, and the hundreds of meters long Kusanagi sword was easily pushed away by him. Orochimaru saw that the Kusanagi sword could not hurt him at all, so he had no choice but to retract the long sword. Then he peeled off the skin from his head, shed his skin and landed from the air. Uchiha Itachi released his tailed beast transformation. He looked at Orochimaru who was descending from the air and said lightly, Orochimaru, you can't even break my defense, do you want to continue fighting? You don't have much chakra left. He. Orochimaru sneered, I still have 2 trump cards, it seems that I have to show them in advance today. He bit his finger and then clasped his hands together. Summoning technique Imperial World Reincarnation. 2 coffins slowly emerged from the ground, with the words, 1 and 2, written on them respectively. This is. Uchiha Itachi looked at the familiar scene in front of him, and subconsciously thought of what was inside the coffin. The coffin slowly opened, and 2 familiar figures walked out from it. One with black hair and the other with white hair. It's hard to imagine that these 2 people were born to the same parents. They are the first generation Hokage and the second generation Hokage. How about it? 1 against 7 Itachi facing the first and second Hokage at the same time, how should you deal with it? Orochimaru licked his lips with a long tongue and showed a sinister smile. Uchiha Itachi stared at the figures of the 2 people in front of him, his expression did not change at all. He raised his eyes slightly, and his eyes turned into a red Mangekyo Sharingan. He said calmly, if it was the first and second generations in their prime, it would be difficult for me to win against either of them. But unfortunately, the purity of your impure world reincarnation technique is not high this time. How much combat power can the 2 Hokages exert, Orochimaru? Haha, is that so? Orochimaru smiled, then let you see the strength of the 2 Hokages. He took out 2 kunai with talisman paper and stabbed them into the heads of Hashirama Senju and Tobarama Senju respectively. Then Orochimaru made seals with his hands, and the dull eyes of the 2 Hokages suddenly became smart, and they had independent consciousness. Are you summoning me again, Orochimaru? How dare you abuse my forbidden technique? Tobarama Senju spoke first after regaining consciousness. This time I summoned the 2 Hokages to ask for their help. Orochimaru's voice sounded behind them. Soga, so that's it, do you want to borrow our power? Tobirama Senju ignored Orochimaru and looked at Uchiha Itachi. When he saw a deep scratch on the forehead of Uchiha Itachi wearing Konoha's forehead guard, his expression froze. A traitor from Konoha. He narrowed his eyes slightly, and then found the strangeness of Uchiha Itachi's eyes. So that's it, the Uchiha clan's eyes are not basic Magatama patterns, Mangekyo Sharingan. Sure enough, they are not good people. Senju Hashirama, who was standing by, heard his brother's unfriendly tone and began to chatter. Tobirama, I have warned you many times not to talk like this. The Uchiha clan is also a member of Konoha. Only by unity and friendship can the village develop peacefully. Although there is a scratch on his forehead, it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it was scratched in battle. You see, he is just a child. Shut up, big brother, you are too long-winded. Senju Tobirama retorted mercilessly. Alas, you are still the same. Senju Hashirama looked lost and lowered his head helplessly. He. Orochimaru's cold laughter sounded from behind them again. Two Hokages, let's talk about the past later, help me take him down first. He said, and the two Hokages' self-consciousness suddenly disappeared. Their eyes became empty, and only their self-consciousness of fighting remained. Go. Orochimaru gave an order, and Senju Hashirama and Senju Tobirama's bodies shook for a while and suddenly rushed towards Uchiha Itachi. What a fast speed. Uchiha Itachi looked at the two of them rushing towards him, and his eyelids jumped. The next moment, Senju Tobirama threw several kunai at him. Uchiha Itachi's Sharingan made a prediction in advance. After dodging the kunai attack, he took the initiative to move forward and fight with the fastest Senju Hashirama. The two used physical skills to fight. After several rounds of fighting, Uchiha Itachi used the advantage of Sharingan to find the loopholes in Senju Hashirama's moves. He took advantage of the gap when Hashirama attacked and kicked him out. At this time, Senju Tobirama had already circled behind him. He was seen making seals with both hands and shouted. Water style. Water dragon bullet. A column of water suddenly emerged from Senju Tobirama's body, and the water column turned into the form of a water dragon and attacked Uchiha Itachi. Wow, it's amazing, he can use such a large-scale water style in the desert. Uchiha Itachi was shocked. Although he knew that Senju Tobirama was known as the great inventor of ninjutsu. His water style was even ridiculed by Naruto fans as sea style. But being able to use such a large-scale water style in such a dry environment was beyond his cognition. Uchiha Itachi did not dare to be negligent. He made seals with both hands and used fire style to fight against water style. Fire style. Fire dragon flame bullet. Uchiha Itachi spewed out a huge fire dragon from his mouth. The fire dragon and the water dragon collided in the air, and a large amount of water vapor came out. In this dry and hot environment, Uchiha Itachi's fire escape finally took the advantage. Uchiha Itachi increased his power, and the fire dragon became thicker and thicker. In a moment, the fire dragon covered and evaporated the water dragon, and was about to pounce on Senju Tobirama. Senju Tobirama changed the seals of his hands and put his hands together. Water escape water formation wall. A wall of water emerged around him, blocking the attack of the fire dragon. Uchiha Itachi's fire escape was extinguished, and Senju Tobirama's hands formed seals again. Water escape water breaking wave. A high-pressure water column came out from Senju Tobirama. The water column passed through the steam and attacked Uchiha Itachi. Uchiha Itachi was shocked. Before he could react, his body was directly penetrated by the high-pressure water column. The next moment, with a bang, Uchiha Itachi's body turned into a puff of smoke and disappeared. Shadow clone. Uchiha Itachi used the shadow clone to lure the enemy, and his real body had already rushed to Senju Tobirama under the cover of the steam. At this time, he was holding a long sword and was about to cut Senju Tobirama in half. And at this moment, a vine suddenly grew under his feet. Senju Hashirama, who was not far away, put his hands together. Wooden shield tree world descends. Countless vines grew rapidly, and Uchiha Itachi's feet were unstable, and he quickly retreated. Ah! I only heard Senju Hashirama shouting, and the growth rate of the vines accelerated. Those vines seemed to have their own consciousness and attacked Uchiha Itachi madly. Uchiha Itachi waved the long sword in his hand while retreating, cutting off the thick vines. He used the advantage of the Sharingan to always predict the attack direction of the vines in advance. Seeing this, Senju Toburama changed the seals of his hands. Illusion darkness walking technique. The surroundings around him suddenly became dim, and the darkness spread in all directions. Uchiha Itachi's eyes suddenly became dark. This is the ninjutsu specially developed by the second-generation Hokage Senju Toburama to restrain the Uchiha clan's Sharingan. It can absorb all light sources and make everything around it shrouded in darkness. This is troublesome. Uchiha Itachi's expression became solemn. After losing the light, his Sharingan also lost its function. At this time, the vines under his feet were still growing. Taking advantage of the moment when Uchiha Itachi was blind, countless vines spread to Uchiha Itachi, and tied Uchiha Itachi up in an instant. Itachi Uchiha struggled hard, but the more he struggled, the tighter the vines wrapped around him. Did you succeed? Orochimaru, who was watching the battle, smiled excitedly. He felt the changes in the battle through the heat perception ability of snakes. Don't kill him, he is my perfect container. Orochimaru licked his tongue with a smile, but you can cut off his hand and foot meridians first to prevent him from escaping. Senju Toburama and Senju Hashirama heard Orochimaru's order and walked slowly towards Itachi Uchiha. Just as the two of them approached Itachi Uchiha, Itachi Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan moved. A huge energy burst out from Itachi Uchiha's body. Countless chakras gathered towards Itachi Uchiha's body, and the next moment, a huge Susanoo appeared on Itachi Uchiha's body. Orochimaru, I said, all your methods are useless in front of my eyes. Itachi Uchiha's cold voice sounded in the darkness. Then the huge Susanoo transformed into a 10-fist sword. The 10-fist sword pierced through the bodies of Hashirama Senju and Toburama Senju at an extremely fast speed. The moment their bodies were pierced by the 10-fist sword, the darkness retreated. Uchiha Itachi stood in front of Orochimaru like a god. He looked down at Orochimaru, as if he was looking down at an insignificant ant. This is Susanoo, the legendary power. Orochimaru's eyes widened, his face full of disbelief. The huge sense of oppression made him sweat coldly. After a moment of unconsciousness, he gradually calmed down, and the shock on his face gradually turned into excitement. He licked his long tongue. It's getting more and more interesting. You really gave me too many surprises. 1 against 7, Itachi, but this level of attack is not enough to defeat the two Hokages. Under the impure world reincarnation, they will recover soon. Oh, really? Uchiha Itachi's eyes were cold and he showed a playful smile. The next moment, the pierced bodies of Senju Toburama and Senju Hashirama showed no signs of repair. Under the sealing power of the 10-fisted sword, the two bodies gradually cracked and then turned into ashes bit by bit. Why? Why is this happening? Orochimaru was shocked again. He could no longer feel the souls of the two Hokages. This means that his impure world reincarnation technique has been cracked. He began to carefully observe the artifact in Susanoo's hand, and tried to search in his memory. After a while, he finally found the doorway. Could it be? Is this the legendary 10-fist sword? The legendary sealed sword? Orochimaru exclaimed, and he subconsciously took 2 steps back. Uchiha Itachi looked at his panic, smiled and said, Orochimaru, to be honest, I don't want to kill you. If you don't care about my body anymore, I can consider making you my subordinate. What? Orochimaru was stunned when he heard Uchiha Itachi's words, and his face became strange. Hee. Do you want me to give up resistance? But the first rule of the Akatsuki organization is, those who defect from the organization will die. He thought about it, and a sly smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. So that's it, it seems that you are also over-consuming chakra, and your oil is exhausted. You think that 2 naive words can make me surrender, you are too naive Itachi. As he said that, Orochimaru quickly formed seals with both hands, preparing to release a new ninjutsu. Ah! Uchiha Itachi was stunned, with a black question mark on his face. No, is this how you use your imagination? Orochimaru said regardless, even if you are not in good condition now, I will not underestimate you. Let me use this technique to end the battle. Yamada no Orochi technique. Orochimaru shouted. His body expanded rapidly and turned into a huge Yamada no Orochi. The Yamata no Orochi exuded a terrifying aura, and each snake head was extremely ferocious, spewing venom and flames from its mouth. Orochimaru controlled the Yamata no Orochi and crawled towards Uchiha Itachi's Susanoo. This is one of Orochimaru's most powerful techniques, and he wants to defeat Uchiha Itachi with this powerful force. Uchiha Itachi saw this, his eyes were still cold, but revealed a little helplessness. It seems that it will be difficult to subdue him if he is not completely defeated. He thought to himself. Then Susanoo's left hand transformed into a sacred artifact, Yasukami, and blocked Susanoo's body. Orochimaru's 8 heads kept stretching, their mouths opened wide, revealing their fangs, and roared at Uchiha Itachi. Uchiha Itachi controlled Susanoo and swung the 10-fisted sword in his hand. When the huge snake head attacked, he blocked it with a shield, and then cut off Orochimaru's 7 heads one by one. The legendary Yamata no Orochi has 8 lives. When only one head of Orochimaru was left, Uchiha Itachi stopped swinging the sword. He looked at Orochimaru's squirming white snake body and said coldly, "You are convinced now." But Orochimaru's cold laughter came from the remaining snake head, he. This level of attack can't kill me. Then the huge snake head opened its mouth, and Orochimaru's body slowly crawled out from it. He spit out a Kusanagi sword from his mouth, held it in his hand, and said excitedly, "Do you know, Itachi? This is the moment I have been waiting for. From today on, I will get your body." "What? Are you crazy? There is only one head left, and you are still pretending." Uchiha Itachi looked at him with a crazy look, which was really a bit incomprehensible. He really had an impulse to end Orochimaru's life with a knife. And the next moment, the 7 heads cut off by Uchiha Itachi actually emitted gas. I saw that the waves of poisonous gas surrounded Uchiha Itachi, and all of a sudden, everything around was covered by the poisonous gas and became blurred. Uchiha Itachi's heart trembled, and he realized that the situation was not good. This poisonous gas seemed to be corrosive, and the figure of Susanoo began to melt gradually. How could this happen? Uchiha Itachi frowned, and after a moment of trance, he suddenly realized something. Not good. He subconsciously covered his mouth and nose. It was the gas he just inhaled that made his consciousness gradually blurred. Mush. The next moment, Orochimaru's voice sounded in Uchiha Itachi's mind. He. It should be effective now. My white snake blood will turn into anesthetic when it comes into contact with air. I am immortal, and your technique cannot kill me. Come on Itachi, I will take your body. As Orochimaru's voice ended, Uchiha Itachi's consciousness came to a space of another dimension. There were disgusting pieces of meat squirming under his feet, and the surroundings were blood red. What the hell, where is this? Uchiha Itachi looked around in surprise. Orochimaru's body grew out of the piece of meat on the ground, and his body was covered with minced meat and tentacles, which looked quite disgusting. He. Orochimaru's evil smile emerged, and his face grew out of the minced meat. This is the alternate dimension of my body, and I will take your body here. Reincarnation technique. I see. But this scene is too disgusting. Uchiha Itachi looked at Orochimaru with disdain. He almost vomited when he saw Orochimaru's long snake head spit out. Bear with it, don't worry, the ceremony will be over soon. Orochimaru smiled and crawled towards Uchiha Itachi. Countless tentacles began to grow under the flesh of Uchiha Itachi's feet. The tentacles were like long snakes with skin peeled off, constantly wrapping around his body. Not long after, Uchiha Itachi's body was completely covered by tentacles, revealing only his handsome face. Ha. Orochimaru crawled in front of Uchiha Itachi with an excited smile. He stared at Uchiha Itachi's eyes and couldn't help but exclaimed, "What perfect eyes, he will finally belong to me. I really can't stand it." Uchiha Itachi clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. Although his consciousness was in the other dimension, the feeling of the tentacles crawling all over his body was too real. He finally couldn't bear it anymore. He saw his pair of Sharingan move, and the tentacles on his body began to melt. A force emanated from his body, and all the broken meat around him was burned to ashes. What is going on? Orochimaru stared at the changes around him with wide eyes, his eyes full of shock and fear. No, it's impossible. This is the other dimension I created. I am the master here. It's impossible, impossible, absolutely impossible. He screamed in fear, and the pieces of flesh on his body gradually fell off. Orochimaru, your disgusting tricks should end. I said, none of your ninjutsu will work in front of my eyes. Uchiha Itachi looked at Orochimaru and said coldly. Orochimaru's consciousness was gradually eroded, and he was finally completely immersed in Uchiha Itachi's illusion. Uchiha Itachi's consciousness left the extra-dimensional space created by Orochimaru. The desert wind had blown away the poison gas, and Orochimaru stood in the desert with his eyes closed. Uchiha Itachi looked at him, his vision was a little blurry, and his eyes hurt badly every time he used the Mangekyo Sharingan. It seems that the plan to transplant eyes should be put on the agenda, otherwise, sooner or later, I will go blind. Uchiha Itachi thought to himself. He rubbed his eyes and walked slowly towards Orochimaru. A surgical operation like eye transplantation must be performed by a professional surgeon, otherwise it would be more trouble than gain if there were side effects. The best surgeon choice at the moment is Orochimaru in front of him. Although his medical skills are not great, he has been doing human experiments for many years and has a very high level of attainment in organ transplantation. How can I persuade him to work for me? Uchiha Itachi thought to himself. A traitor like Orochimaru might stab you in the back. If he really went to the operating table, it's possible that Uchiha Itachi fell asleep during the anesthesia. Who knows if he is a man or a woman now? Thinking that he doesn't know who gave birth to his future son Mitsuki, Uchiha Itachi's hair stood on end. Uchiha Itachi got goosebumps all over his body, and he couldn't help rubbing his hands. Hey, don't think about it, business is important. He said that he had come to Orochimaru and was about to untie his illusion. At this moment, several shurikens flew towards him. Uchiha Itachi was startled without any defense and immediately retreated. The next moment, a figure holding a kunai landed in front of Orochimaru. Lord Orochimaru. Kabuto Yakushi shouted. He protected in front of Orochimaru and looked at Uchiha Itachi with a vigilant face. Uchiha Itachi, what did you do to Lord Orochimaru? Kabuto Yakushi gritted his teeth, watching his beloved Lord Orochimaru standing there unmoved, his eyes full of anger. Koto Yakushi. You two are really in love. Uchiha Itachi looked at his angry look and sighed. Then he continued. Don't worry, he is not dead yet, he is just under my illusion. Kabuto Yakushi heard it, covered Orochimaru's forehead and immediately made a seal. Illusion relieve. But Orochimaru remained unmoved. It's useless. Uchiha Itachi looked at him and shook his head, saying, the illusion of the Sharingan is not an ordinary illusion, and ordinary seals cannot be broken. When Kabuto Yakushi heard this, his expression was very ugly. He shouted at Uchiha Itachi. Uchiha Itachi, I order you to break the spell of Lord Orochimaru immediately, otherwise. His eyes became extremely fierce, and the kunai in his hand was held tighter. Ah! Uchiha Itachi was stunned. You order me. You are afraid you have lost your mind. At this time, Uchiha Itachi thought to himself that this guy stood in front of Orochimaru, as if he was protecting his little wife. Kabuto Yakushi would not really have some special relationship with Orochimaru. Thinking about it, Uchiha Itachi thought of the hair color of Orochimaru's future son Mitsuki. He looked at Kabuto Yakushi's hair and felt like he had guessed something. He smiled shyly with his hands covering his mouth. What are you laughing at? Kabuto Yakushi looked at Uchiha Itachi's rich expression changes, and he became even more angry. No, no. Uchiha Itachi waved his hand and said, I just suddenly thought of something happy. I don't care what mess you are thinking about, now immediately untie Lord Orochimaru's illusion, otherwise I will really be rude to you. Kabuto Yakushi said while pointing the kunai at Uchiha Itachi. Seeing this, Uchiha Itachi put away his smile, coughed twice, and his expression became serious again. He said, what if I say no? You don't really think you are my opponent. As soon as Uchiha Itachi finished speaking, he exuded endless pressure. Kabuto Yakushi's expression froze, and the huge pressure made his forehead veins bulge and cold sweat broke out. Uchiha Itachi looked at him, smiled and said, your Lord Orochimaru has always coveted my body. When he performed the reincarnation technique, my technique backfired and I'm afraid he's dying. Why don't you follow me? We're both traitors anyway, so it doesn't matter who you follow. If Kabuto had come to his senses at this time and turned from evil to good, Uchiha Itachi might really give up Orochimaru and choose Kabuto instead. After all, this guy has a weak sense of autonomy and is easier to control. If Kabuto Yakushi inherited Orochimaru's technique in the later period, he could completely replace Orochimaru. Unfortunately, Kabuto Yakushi was unmoved at this time. He held the kunai tightly. His eyes said firmly, "Wishful thinking, I will never betray Lord Orochimaru." He threw the kunai in his hand at Uchiha Itachi, and the kunai had a detonating tag on it. The next moment, there was a violent explosion with a bang, and thick smoke billowed. Yakushi Kabuto condensed chakra in his hands, and he attacked Uchiha Itachi through the thick smoke. Chakra hand knife. Uchiha Itachi looked at the figure of Yakushi Kabuto rushing towards him through the thick smoke. "Then let me see the strength of you," a ninja who was evaluated by Jiraiya as having the strength of Kakashi. In the billowing smoke, Uchiha Itachi and Yakushi Kabuto fought fiercely. Yakushi Kabuto's chakra hand knife was wielded fiercely, and each blow was full of resolute momentum. Uchiha Itachi responded calmly, and he evaded Yakushi Kabuto's attack flexibly, and at the same time, he saw the opportunity and fought back with swift punches and feet. The speed of the two people's battle was getting faster and faster, and the air around them seemed to be stirred and boiled. Kabuto Yakushi continued to perform various ninjutsu, trying to suppress Uchiha Itachi, but Uchiha Itachi resolved them one by one with his superb fighting skills and the insight of the Sharingan. As the battle continued, Uchiha Itachi gradually gained the upper hand. He saw a flaw in Kabuto Yakushi and kicked him in the abdomen, knocking him back several steps. Kabuto Yakushi stabilized his body, a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were still firm, and he rushed towards Uchiha Itachi again. When the smoke gradually dissipated, Uchiha Itachi and Kabuto stood still. There was no sign of fighting at the scene. Kabuto Yakushi was hit by Uchiha Itachi's illusion at the beginning. Everything he did was done in the illusion. Uchiha Itachi calmly walked past him, and then walked in front of Orochimaru. After thinking for a long time, he finally made a decision. Let's use Shisui's Koto Amatsukami. Anyway, as long as we get Hashirama's cells, Koto Amatsukami's CD can be cooled quickly. He muttered to himself, and then formed seals with his hands. Summoning technique. He summoned a crow with a Sharingan. This was the eye that Shisui had reserved for him before he died. In addition, he also had another eye of Shisui taken from Danzo and Kakashi's Kamui Sharingan. The crow landed on Uchiha Itachi's shoulder, and Uchiha Itachi's Sharingan turned into a Mangekyo. Under the guidance of Uchiha Itachi's pupil technique, the crow's Sharingan also changed. The next moment, Shisui's eyes launched the strongest illusion against Orochimaru, Koto Amatsukami. Koto Amatsukami finished casting the spell, and the crow turned into a puff of white smoke and disappeared. Uchiha Itachi covered his eyes and staggered back 2 steps before he could barely stand. He bent over and gasped, as if his body was hollowed out. As expected of the strongest illusion Koto Amatsukami, he drained all the chakra from my body in an instant. As expected, the stronger the ninjutsu, the greater the side effects. At this time, Uchiha Itachi felt that his vision was getting more and more blurred, his eyelids drooped, and he was drowsy. In this state, the illusion cast on Kabuto Yakushi could no longer be maintained. In a trance, Kabuto came back to his senses from the spiritual world. He was stunned for a moment, and then reacted immediately. Looking back, he saw Uchiha Itachi standing in front of Orochimaru. Lord Orochimaru. Kabuto Yakushi was shocked when he saw this, and immediately rushed towards Uchiha Itachi. Uchiha Itachi, what are you going to do to Lord Orochimaru? He condensed chakra in his hands and rushed over like crazy. Uchiha Itachi looked back with difficulty, and saw only a vague figure in his daze. He was exhausted and his body could no longer support him. Seeing that Kabuto Yakushi was about to rush in front of him, Orochimaru suddenly opened his eyes at this critical moment. His figure was as fast as lightning. When Kabuto Yakushi's hand knife was about to chop off Uchiha Itachi's head, Orochimaru kicked Kabuto Yakushi's body directly. Lord Orochimaru, you. Kabuto Yakushi climbed up with difficulty after being kicked away, his face full of disbelief. You are not allowed to attack Itachi-kun. Orochimaru's gloomy voice sounded, and he spoke to Kabuto Yakushi lightly. Kabuto Yakushi was stunned for a moment, and his shocked expression gradually became calm after a moment of distraction. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and said, "So that's it. I was impulsive and almost broke Lord Orochimaru's perfect container." "No." Orochimaru shook his head, and he looked at Uchiha Itachi with respect. Then, Orochimaru knelt on one knee respectfully in front of Uchiha Itachi, and he said self-blamingly, "Itachi-kun, I'm sorry. Please forgive my subordinates for being disrespectful to you. It's my fault for not disciplining you." Yakushi Kabuto looked at the bizarre scene in front of him, and his pupils shrank. He widened his eyes and couldn't believe the truth in front of him. There was a storm in his heart. He never thought that Orochimaru, whom he regarded as a god, would one day crawl at the feet of others. "It's an illusion, it must be an illusion." Yakushi Kabuto shouted in surprise, "Uchiha Itachi, this must be your illusion, it can't be true." As he spoke, he shook his head frantically, trying to wake himself up from the unbelievable scene in front of him. When Orochimaru heard this, his eyes condensed. He turned to look at Kabuto Yakushi, his eyes full of murderous intent. He said coldly, "Kabuto, if you disrespect Itachi-kun again, I don't mind killing you." A chill hit Kabuto Yakushi. Orochimaru's eyes were like an icy abyss. Kabuto Yakushi trembled all over, and felt that his body was like falling into an ice cave. He had never seen Orochimaru so stern, and the shock in his heart reached its peak. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but didn't know how to start. He stood there blankly, looking at Orochimaru and Uchiha Itachi, his heart full of confusion and bewilderment. Uchiha Itachi secretly observed the master and servant, and a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He secretly sighed in his heart that Betsuamatsukami was worthy of being one of the strongest plugins written by Kishimoto. Ahem. Uchiha Itachi pretended to cough twice, breaking the deadlock between Orochimaru and Kabuto Yakushi. "Forget it, Orochimaru." He waved his hand and continued, "To educate your subordinates, you should use both kindness and force. Don't start fighting as soon as you open your mouth. This is not conducive to unity." "Yes." Orochimaru immediately lowered his head and responded. "Also, don't always have a stern face. Smile more, okay?" "Yes." Orochimaru forced a smile from his face. "No, why are you smiling so obscenely? Relax your expression." "Yes." Kabuto Yakushi watched Uchiha Itachi scolding Orochimaru, and his whole body was numb. What on earth is going on? This world is too crazy. His three views exploded, and he really couldn't accept the blow of reality. He fainted without taking a breath. Uchiha Itachi watched him fall, and the lecture stopped abruptly. He sighed softly, "Young people nowadays are too weak to even take this kind of blow." Uchiha Itachi put his hands behind his back, looking very old. He shook his head and was about to take a step when his eyes suddenly went dark and he passed out. In a daze, he only found himself lying on a cold snake skin and speeding along. In the distance, Scorpion was getting rid of the third generation after the entanglement of the wind shadow. He finally rushed over. At this time, he looked like a teenager. When he saw the body of Uchiha Itachi lying on the head of Orochimaru's summoning snake, he was shocked on the spot. Uchiha Itachi actually lost to that stinky snake. He narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself while staring at the direction where Orochimaru was going away. Tick, tick, tick. The stalactites on the top of the cave were dripping. Uchiha Itachi finally opened his eyes slowly after being unconscious for 3 days. When he found himself in a dim environment, he suddenly got up and the quilt on his body fell to the ground. Where is this? He observed the surrounding environment vigilantly. The next moment, he only saw Kabuto Yakushi fiddling with the instrument beside him. "You're awake, Lord Itachi." Kabuto Yakushi looked at Uchiha Itachi with a smile on his lips. Uchiha Itachi was stunned, and he suddenly felt a little uncomfortable looking at Kabuto Yakushi's changed attitude. He was silent for a moment and then slowly said, "Where is this? Where is Orochimaru?" As soon as he finished speaking, before Kabuto Yakushi could answer, Orochimaru walked in. He. Itachi-kun, this is our secret base. Are you feeling unwell? Orochimaru said with a smile. Huh, Uchiha Itachi breathed a sigh of relief, and finally let go of his heart. He said, how long have I been unconscious? 3 days, Orochimaru stretched out 3 fingers, but I have done a full body check on your body, and there should be nothing serious. Full body check. Uchiha Itachi was stunned for a moment, and suddenly his anus tightened. He asked nervously, you didn't do anything strange to my body, did you? Orochimaru smiled and said, don't worry, it's just some routine checks, but there seems to be something wrong with your eyes. Really? Uchiha Itachi let go of his heart, and he stretched out his hand to see the fingerprints on his hand and test his eyesight. But as soon as he looked closely, his eyes suddenly began to blur. He couldn't see the lines on his hands clearly, he was already extremely nearsighted. Ah, as expected. He sighed helplessly, and then the Magatama in his eyes appeared. His expression became serious and he said to Orochimaru lightly, Orochimaru, do you want to hear my plan? Orochimaru nodded and lowered his eyebrows, and replied softly, I am willing to listen. Uchiha Itachi's Sharingan stared at Orochimaru, and he slowly said, Orochimaru, I know you have been pursuing the way to immortality. You can do anything to get eternal life. But have you ever thought that this world is about to be destroyed, and everything you pursue will soon cease to exist? What? Orochimaru was stunned when he heard it, and his heart skipped a beat, shocked by Uchiha Itachi's words. After his will was changed by Koto Amatsukami, he believed in Uchiha Itachi's words. If this world is about to be destroyed, then is there any meaning for the eternal life he has been pursuing for so many years? Orochimaru fell into deep thought. His thoughts went back to his childhood, and he thought of the little white-scaled snake that shed its skin. No, this world should not end here, he should live forever like himself. Orochimaru thought in his heart, and deep in his heart, he secretly made a decision. Uchiha Itachi looked at the change in Orochimaru's expression, and he was happy in his heart. Sure enough, the mouth persuasion still worked. He cleared his throat and continued, you should know in the Akatsuki organization that they collect tailed beasts. On the surface, they are collecting tailed beasts to make tailed beast weapons, monopolize war, and thus cause world wars and finally unify the ninja world. But in fact, it is for the Infinite Tsukuyomi plan. Infinite Tsukuyomi. Orochimaru frowned, a little puzzled. Uchiha Itachi didn't waste words and showed his true strength in mouth-to-mouth. He repeated the words of Pua Biwa Juzo that day to Orochimaru again, and interspersed various other contents in between. These words made Orochimaru stunned, and the more he listened, the tighter his brows frowned. Kabuto Yakushi, who was listening to the side, also stopped the work at hand. He was half believing and half doubting Uchiha Itachi's words, but this was enough to shock him. He had no concept of this world. In his worldview, Orochimaru was his heaven, and what Orochimaru wanted to do was what he had to do. All he had to do was to help Lord Orochimaru realize his dream. Uchiha Itachi said a lot of things, and finally he looked at Orochimaru and said seriously, Orochimaru, are you willing to stop everything with me? After thinking for a moment, Orochimaru knelt on one knee without hesitation, and said solemnly, although I, Orochimaru, am a bandit, I also know the words of loyalty and righteousness. As the saying goes, a bird that chooses a tree will live in a good tree, and a minister who chooses a master will meet a wise master. My life's wish is enough. From now on, my life is the life of Itachi, and my body is the body of Itachi. I will obey your orders and have no second thoughts. If I violate my oath, I will be punished by heaven and earth. Ah! As soon as these words came out, Uchiha Itachi was directly embarrassed on the spot. Uchiha Itachi thought to himself, this is too explosive. What did you change about Orochimaru, Koto Amatsukami? He glanced at the shocked Kabuto Yakushi next to him, thinking, shouldn't you add, me too? Ahem. Uchiha Itachi coughed twice and continued, I feel relieved when you said that. Then Uchiha Itachi took out a passbook and handed it to Orochimaru. He said, in this case, you will be the second member of the Crow organization from now on, codenamed D. This passbook is the startup capital. From now on, we have to build our own ninja village, constantly recruit soldiers and strengthen our own strength. At the same time, you have to continue to study Hashirama cells and develop technology, which is very important. Yes, Itachi. I will definitely live up to my mission. Orochimaru took the passbook and nodded solemnly. Uchiha Itachi took a long breath, and after saying a lot of words, he suddenly felt a little tired. He was about to lie down as usual, but at this moment his eyes suddenly hurt badly. Uchiha Itachi subconsciously covered his eyes, his vision became more and more blurred, and he felt that he was about to go blind. Itachi-kun, what's wrong with you? Seeing this, Orochimaru hurried forward to ask. Uchiha Itachi waved his hand, and after a while, the pain in his eyes gradually disappeared. It seems that I have to transplant a new Sharingan. Uchiha Itachi said to himself. Then he took out a glass bottle and handed it to Orochimaru. The bottle contained a pair of Sharingans, one of which was Shisui's Mangekyo dug out from Danzo's eyes, and the other was Kakashi's Kamui Mangekyo. Orochimaru, as you can see, there is a risk of blindness after excessive use of Sharingan. My eyes have reached their limit, so I have to replace them with new ones. Orochimaru, this pair of Sharingan is handed over to you. Please transplant them to me as soon as possible. Uchiha Itachi said seriously. Understood, Itachi-kun, please leave it to me. I will use genetic technology to make you perfectly fit these eyes. Orochimaru took the bottle respectfully. This surgery was performed by Orochimaru himself. Although this kind of transplant had performed organ transplantation surgery no less than 1,000 times. But this time he was extra careful. In order to avoid leaving sequelae to Uchiha Itachi, the operation lasted for 3 hours. After the operation, Orochimaru was sweating profusely. A few days later, Uchiha Itachi's eyes had fully recovered. Orochimaru slowly removed the bandage for him. When Uchiha Itachi opened his eyes again, a beam of light shone into his eyes. Uchiha Itachi, who had not seen the light for a long time, finally saw the light again. Uchiha Itachi moved his eyes, adapted to the light, and looked at Orochimaru. There were 2 different patterns in his pair of Mangekyo Sharingan pupils. On the left was Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan, and on the right was Obito's Kamui Mangekyo. What wonderful eyes! Orochimaru stared at the pupils blankly and couldn't help but sigh. His admiration for Uchiha Itachi has reached a new level. Uchiha Itachi blinked and said lightly, then let me try the power of these eyes. He turned his head and released the Kamui skill of his right eye towards the stalactites on the stone cave. The next moment, the stalactites began to twist and then disappeared. It's the power of space. Orochimaru stared at the scene with wide eyes. Kabuto Yakushi on the side was also shocked. It's not over yet, let's try the left eye again. Uchiha Itachi said to himself. Then he looked at Kabuto Yakushi and released Shisui's illusion Koto Amatsukami. In silence, Kabuto Yakushi's mind was completely controlled by Uchiha Itachi. As expected, Uchiha Itachi nodded with satisfaction. There is a difference between Shisui's 2 eyes Koto Amatsukami. The right eye's Koto Amatsukami can permanently change a person's will without being noticed. This skill is very outrageous, but the cooldown time is also as long as 10 years. The other eye's Koto Amatsukami can also change someone's will silently. But this is only temporary. When the spell is over, the person will recover. During the 5-Cage Summit, Danzo used this Koto Amatsukami to temporarily control Mifune. These 2 eyes, the right eye is powerful and has a long cooldown time. The left eye is weaker and has a short cooldown time. In comparison, Uchiha Itachi prefers the left eye. In a battle, as long as he can control the opponent for a moment, he can easily win. Okay, the experiment is over. It's time to prepare the next plan. Uchiha Itachi said lightly. After a few days of recuperation, Uchiha Itachi has completely adapted to the new eyes. Orochimaru also restarted the cultivation plan of Hashirama's cells. These days he has been thinking about how to return to the Akatsuki organization, but he has never thought of a suitable reason. After thinking about it, he decided to take advantage of this period to strengthen his own strength. He has obtained the 2 major plugins in Naruto, the Tailed Beast Chakra and the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. If he learns the immortal arts again, he will be invincible in the world. The 3 major sacred places for learning immortal arts are Myoboku Mountain, Ryachi Cave, and Shitsumori Forest. In the original plot of Naruto, Myoboku Mountain is a fairy mountain near the Hidden Leaf village in the Land of Fire. It is the habitat of the Toad Sage. Naruto learned the immortal arts from the Toad Sage here and mastered the Sage mode. Raichi Cave. A fairy land as famous as Myoboku Mountain, it is the place where Orochimaru once practiced. Kabuto Yakushi learned the immortal arts here under the guidance of the White Snake Sage. Wet Bone Forest. It is said to be the home of the Slug Sage. Many people speculate that the Sage mode of the first Hokage was learned from the Wet Bone Forest. For Uchiha Itachi, what he wanted to learn most was of course the Sage technique of the Wet Bone Forest. Like the first Hokage, he didn't need to make a seal, just put his hands together and whatever he called would come true. There were no prerequisites or side effects. Relatively speaking, the Sage mode of Myoboku Mountain not only needs to be charged for 5 minutes in advance, but the natural power collected each time is only enough for 5 minutes. In comparison, there are great limitations. Not to mention the Raichi Cave, using the Sage mode of the Raichi Cave will cause a person's body to mutate. The caster must bear the changes that the Sage technique brings to the human body. For example, some snake characteristics will appear, or dragon horns will grow, etc. If the body is not strong enough and cannot withstand the Sage technique chakra, it will make oneself lose reason directly, and even explode and die in serious cases. And the weakest part of Uchiha Itachi is his body. Uchiha Itachi was set to be physically weak and had a terminal illness at a young age. For Uchiha Itachi, Raichi Cave should have been the worst choice for learning immortal arts. But during this period, Orochimaru had introduced him to a dragon transforming pool in Raichi Cave, and those who bathed in the pool would be reborn and become dragons. However, this road is indeed very dangerous, and no one has been able to withstand the test of the dragon transforming pool so far. Orochimaru had learned immortal arts in Raichi Cave and had already achieved success. But he was greedy and wanted to go further. In the end, he could not withstand the test of the dragon transforming pool and almost died in the dragon transforming pool. Fortunately, he escaped by shedding his skin, but was sentenced by the White Snake Immortal to never step into the place of immortal arts trial again for life. Later, Orochimaru studied the power of the curse seal in order to obtain the natural chakra of immortal arts again. After several days of careful consideration, Uchiha Itachi came up with the idea of going to the Raichi Cave to learn fairy arts. In fact, there is another way to change this weak body, that is, to wait for Orochimaru's research on Hashirama cells to make a major breakthrough, and then use genetic technology to improve the body. But Uchiha Itachi wanted to change his physical condition by strengthening his own body. Hashirama cells are so powerful that even if Orochimaru finds a way to suppress their activity in the future, if his body is weak, it will be easily devoured by Hashirama cells. Uchiha Itachi summoned Orochimaru and wanted to listen to Orochimaru's opinions again. After thinking for a while, Orochimaru said, "I don't mind if you want to go to Raichi Cave to learn fairy arts, but the dragon pond is too dangerous. I'm afraid. It's okay." Uchiha Itachi waved his hand and said, "Just tell me about the content of the trial in Raichi Cave, and I will judge the rest myself." Well, okay. Orochimaru nodded and began to narrate. The trial in Raichi Cave is divided into 3 stages. The first stage of the trial is desire. In short, it is to control your desires, such as greed, anger, and ignorance. People have 7 emotions and 6 desires, and their desires will be infinitely magnified there. Some people are greedy, and there are a lot of temptations of delicacies from mountains and seas. If you are lustful, there will be naked singing girls dancing. There is infinite joy there. As long as you can't resist the temptation, you will easily fall into it. The second stage of the trial is wisdom, which mainly tests intelligence. The messenger of Longdi Cave will ask questions, and you can pass the level if you can solve them within the corresponding time. After passing the level, you will come to the third stage. In fact, strictly speaking, as long as you pass the first 2 stages of the trial, you can practice immortal arts next to the dragon pond in the third trial place. The third trial place contains rich natural power. The liquid in the dragon pond contains special abilities. Apply it on people, and they can easily feel the flow of natural forces around them. But the pool of liquid has an inexplicable attraction. When I first saw the dragon pool, it seemed as if I saw countless real dragons swimming in the pool. At that time, I had an inexplicable feeling that as long as I jumped in, I could turn into a real dragon and soar into the sky. But my reason told me that the liquid in the pool was extremely dangerous and I would die if I went in. But in the end, my reason did not overcome my desire. I was too eager to evolve. I felt that as long as I could be reborn in that pool, everything I pursued would be within my reach. What was the result? As you can imagine, I lost half my life there. The White Snake Immortal also deprived me of my trial qualification. But he reserved a recommendation qualification for me. I can recommend someone to learn immortal arts in Longdi Cave. So after listening to me say so much, do you still want to go? Quote. After Orochimaru finished speaking, he looked at Uchiha Itachi, waiting for his final answer. Uchiha Itachi remained silent, and finally nodded after a long silence. I've decided, I'm going. He said his answer solemnly with a firm look in his eyes. Seeing this, Orochimaru was no longer good at refutation. He also nodded and said nothing more. Then he took Uchiha Itachi to an open place. Orochimaru silently chanted some ancient spells, and his hands slowly formed seals. Spirit summoning technique. With a bang, the figures of the two turned into a puff of green smoke and disappeared from the spot. Orochimaru and Uchiha Itachi came to Raichi Cave, one of the three holy places. They were standing at an entrance at this time. In front of them was a cave entrance, on which were carved two lifelike giant pythons. The two giant pythons spit out snake tongues and held a plaque in their mouths, on which were written the three characters, Raichi Cave. There was a stone tablet at their feet, with a line of large characters engraved on it, those who trespass will die. I really miss it. Orochimaru looked at the cave entrance in front of him and couldn't help but sigh. After a moment of distraction, he turned to Uchiha Itachi and said, "Let's go, Itachi-kun." Yeah. Uchiha Itachi nodded in response. As the two of them took a step forward, a crisp voice came from the cave entrance. Who are you? How dare you trespass into the Raichi Cave? Orochimaru and Uchiha Itachi subconsciously stopped moving forward after hearing this. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly, with an intriguing smile on his face. He said, "We are practitioners who come to seek the immortal's art. Please tell the White Snake Immortal." Oh, is this voice Orochimaru? It's been a long time. Three graceful women walked out of the cave entrance. They had beautiful figures and curves, especially their slender waists, which twisted like snakes, full of endless charm and charm. The slender waist seemed to be broken with a light grip, but it contained a flexible strength. They wore thin and flowing gauze clothes, revealing their fair skin and showing their charm. The scenery on their chests swayed, driving the gauze to fluctuate, surging like waves. The three of them were the three messengers of the White Snake Immortal. They were called Tianxin Shenji, Ikijimaji and Sujinji. They transformed from snakes into human forms and were loyal subordinates of the White Snake Immortal. They were professionally responsible for selecting ninjas who came to Raichi Cave to practice the immortal's art. Uchiha Itachi was stunned by the scenery in front of him, especially the bits and pieces that were looming, making him a little dry. After all, he was really a pure little virgin. Who could resist this? Ahem. Orochimaru looked at Uchiha Itachi, who was a little absent-minded, and couldn't help coughing twice to remind him, Itachi-kun, Itachi-kun. Oh. Uchiha Itachi suddenly came back to his senses, and a trace of embarrassment flashed across his face. Hee. Seeing this, the three women laughed shyly. Tianxin Shenji in the middle opened her red lips and smiled softly. Orochimaru, you have been expelled by Lord Whitesnake. You can't step into the Dragon Cave for the rest of your life. How dare you come here? Orochimaru bowed his hands and saluted softly. Three fairies, although I have lost the qualification for the lifetime trial, Lord Whitesnake has promised to give me a recommendation quota. Today I am here with my recommender to participate in the trial. Hee. Tianxin Shenji chuckled. In this case, let him come alone, I will lead the way for him. You must not take another step forward. Then I'll trouble the three fairies. Orochimaru bowed his hands again. Then he looked at Uchiha Itachi and gave him a look. Uchiha Itachi nodded in response, then stepped forward. The three white snake messengers led Uchiha Itachi into the cave slowly. Passing through the dark passage, they came to a stone chamber. There was a futon in the stone chamber, and 3 long incense sticks were lit in front of the futon. The smoke rose and filled the entire stone chamber, creating a mysterious and solemn atmosphere. Uchiha Itachi stood there. To be honest, he was a little nervous. But more of an expectation for the upcoming trial. The 3 white snake messengers stood aside, and Tien Shin Shenji said, "You sit here and meditate until the 3 long incense sticks burn out, and the first stage of the trial is over. During this period, if you can get rid of distractions and focus on it, you will pass the test." Ah! Uchiha Itachi was stunned for a moment. That's it. How simple. He felt a little disappointed. What about the test? Just use this to test the cadres. Tien Shin Shenji covered her mouth and chuckled, saying, "Don't underestimate this trial. When you really start, you will know how difficult it is." Okay, I know. Uchiha Itachi nodded, took a deep breath, sat down slowly, and began to meditate according to Tien Shin Shenji's instructions. Time passed by minute, and Uchiha Itachi tried to calm his mind and get rid of distracting thoughts. However, it didn't take long before his thoughts began to drift, and all kinds of distracting thoughts kept pouring into his mind. His consciousness came to a magnificent palace. The walls around the palace were inlaid with dazzling gems, emitting charming light. A group of charming dancers dressed in gauze, with graceful postures. They twisted their water snake waists and came towards Uchiha Itachi. Their movements were light and graceful, like fairies descending to the earth, and every look and movement was full of temptation. Every time the dancers shook their waists, they shocked Uchiha Itachi. Uchiha Itachi's eyes kept following the dancer's figure, looking at her with a bit of fascination, as if he was completely intoxicated by this beautiful environment. In the real world, Uchiha Itachi sat steadily on the futon, and he had already started to set up the tent. The 3 white snake messengers saw, they nodded to each other. As expected, he is young and energetic. The incense has brought out lustful thoughts. Tienshin Shenji said lightly. Ikikishimaji nodded and said, "Sister, this lustful thought is the most difficult. This kind of desire is endless. From ancient times to the present, almost no one can resist the temptation and remain calm. It seems that this kid is in danger." Hee. Sutsukui covered her mouth and laughed softly. "In this case, why don't you let me eat him? I haven't tasted the taste of humans for a long time." Tienshin Shenji and Ikikishimaji looked at each other, and they nodded, which was considered to be tacitly agreeing with Sutsukui's words. "Then you stay here and observe. If he sinks again, you can deal with him at will." Tienshin Shenji said lightly. Then she and Ikikishimaji walked out of the stone chamber, leaving only Uchiha Itachi and Sutsukui. Time passed by minute, and Sutsukui observed the changes of Uchiha Itachi. Not long after, she found that Uchiha Itachi's tent was a few centimeters higher. Her eyes began to become cold. "Boy, you can't stand the test, you can't blame me." Tanjinji licked her tongue, she showed her fangs, and a strange smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Her mouth kept getting closer to Uchiha Itachi, and then she bit Uchiha Itachi's neck. At the moment when Tanjinji bit Uchiha Itachi's neck, Uchiha Itachi's body suddenly turned into a crow and disappeared. Tanjinji was stunned and stood there. The next moment, she felt dizzy and suddenly appeared in front of Uchiha Itachi. "Where is this?" Tanjinji looked around and found that the surrounding environment was very unfamiliar. Uchiha Itachi looked at her quietly and said lightly, "This is my spiritual world. You have been trapped by my illusion. Your consciousness is trapped here. How is it possible? This is the Ryachi cave. No one can use illusions to control us here." Suzuki-ji responded loudly in disbelief. Hee, is that so? Uchiha Itachi shook his head and smiled, then revealed the pair of scarlet Mangekyo Sharingan. Suzuki-ji looked at those eyes, her face full of shock. She murmured to herself, "So that's it, the Uchiha clan's Mangekyo Sharingan, no wonder." After a while, she regained her mind and said to Uchiha Itachi, "Tell me, how can you let me out?" Uchiha Itachi smiled and said, "I want you to help me practice concentration." "Help you practice concentration?" Princess Sutsuki was puzzled and asked. "That's right." Uchiha Itachi nodded and said, "The theme of the first stage of the trial in the snake cave is to control one's desire. The purpose should be to allow people to be focused and concentrate when absorbing natural chakra. Only in this way can we sense the flow of chakra in nature, right? Am I right, fairy? Your analysis is good, continue. Princess Sutsuki nodded in approval. Uchiha Itachi continued to analyze and said, and the 3 incense sticks in front of me can interfere with my mind, thereby triggering the strongest desire in my heart. If I can't really control my desire, then I can't practice the sage mode at all. Rather than saying this is a test, it's better to say that this is actually the teaching of fairy arts. Only by being free from external interference and entering a state of selflessness can one merge with nature. This is the necessary condition for learning fairy arts. Pa pa pa. As soon as Uchiha Itachi finished speaking, a round of applause rang out. Princess Sutsuki smiled, clapped her hands and said, "You are really smart, and your analysis is very detailed. Your understanding is completely correct, and this is indeed the key to practicing immortal arts. But there is one thing I don't understand, why do you have to let me help you practice? The incense should outline the picture you want to see." Uchiha Itachi smiled. He looked at Princess Sutsuki's charming face and said, "After all, the picture in my mind is not as impactful as the reality. 2D is not comparable to 36D explosion." What 2D? What 36D? Princess Sutsuki was puzzled. Ahem. Uchiha Itachi coughed a few times and hurriedly explained, "I mean that the pictures in my mind are all rouge and powder. How can they be compared with you, the fairy, and the latitude is not at the same level." As he said that, Uchiha Itachi's eyes subconsciously looked at Princess Sutsuki's chest, and the real fluctuations and the feeling of long were indeed very different. Hee. So that's it. A charming smile appeared on Princess Sujin's face, "Then let me try. But I don't have enough self-control. I'm afraid that if you don't mess up, I can't help but mess up." Sujin twisted her slender waist and her body softened and fell on Uchiha Itachi's chest. Her slender fingers moved slightly and kept wandering on Uchiha Itachi's chest through her clothes. Her eyes were charming like a spring water, and every time she licked her lips, she was full of temptation. Wow. Yes, it's a bit exaggerated. Uchiha Itachi was so nervous that he closed his eyes immediately. He tried to adjust his breathing and tried to calm himself down. Hee. Seeing this, Princess Sujin chuckled, but her movements did not stop, but became more unbridled. Uchiha Itachi clenched his teeth, and fine beads of sweat oozed from his forehead. In order to extinguish the fire in his heart, he turned his mind and created a waterfall with his consciousness. His body appeared on a stubborn stone under the waterfall, allowing the water of the waterfall to rush down and water his body. Calm down, color is emptiness, emptiness is color. He kept repeating in his heart, and his restless heart gradually calmed down. Hee. Physical cooling. Your wishful thinking is wrong. Tuanjinji smiled sweetly, and her figure flashed, and she appeared in the waterfall. She was close to Uchiha Itachi, and her clothes were soaked by water, which made her graceful figure more prominent. Uchiha Itachi felt a hot air rushing to his head, and he took a deep breath and tried to keep himself awake. "No, I must overcome this level," he swore in his heart. Seeing that he was so determined, Tuanjinji raised the corners of her mouth slightly, and a trace of praise flashed in her eyes, but her movements did not stop, but became bolder. Uchiha Itachi felt as if he was in the world of ice and fire. On one side was the burning fire of desire in his heart, and on the other side was his firm will struggling to support it. I got it. He had an idea, and a picture like a flower appeared in his mind. The sighing stubble, the melancholy eyes, the action of picking the nose, directly hit Uchiha Itachi's heart. It seemed that a JK strong woman appeared in front of him, picking his nose, waving and running towards Uchiha Itachi. He shouted while running, Itachi brother. The impact of this scene was too strong, and Uchiha Itachi couldn't help but vomited directly. Sujinji's expression froze, and she was embarrassed on the spot. Vomiting. What does it mean? Do you think I'm disgusting? Sujinji bit her red lips lightly, thinking angrily. Okay, you forced me to do it. Since coquettishness doesn't work, then I'll play soft. Sujinji's body stopped shaking. This time she chose to lie gently on Uchiha Itachi's thigh. Her eyes were full of tears and she looked pitiful. In today's words, this is a real pure girl. She felt Uchiha Itachi's heartbeat with her heart, and her eyes were no longer looking at Uchiha Itachi, but at the waterfall in front of her. I feel it, your rainbow is out again. It's so beautiful, look. Sujinji smiled and pointed to the front, and the waterfall reflected a 7-color rainbow under the sunlight. Uchiha Itachi closed his eyes, his heart was as hard as stone, and he was unmoved. Seeing this, Sujinji sat up straight. She sighed in front of Uchiha Itachi's ear. You haven't dared to look at me straight in the eye until now. If you open your eyes and look at me, I don't believe you will look empty-eyed. Uchiha Itachi's mind was playing the picture of Sister Feng. He was so calm now. HMPH, he snorted coldly and said lightly, you don't need to provoke me. In my current state, as long as the incense burns in, I will definitely pass the test. Hehe. Is that so? Sujinji smiled charmingly, then I have to increase my efforts. As soon as she finished speaking, she leaned close to Uchiha Itachi's ear. She sniffed Uchiha Itachi's scent with her nose, and then exhaled a stream of warm air from her mouth. The air flow entangled Uchiha Itachi's ear roots, warm, itchy, and moist. Uchiha Itachi's mind was disturbed a little, and suddenly there was a little looseness. He clasped his hands together and silently said in his heart, Ruhua plus Sister Feng are on the edge, and the magic power is boundless. The next moment, he vomited again. What? You guys actually look down on me so much. Sujinji was a little angry. She couldn't bear it this time, she directly reached back and shook it hard. HMPH, I've caught your weakness, let's see how you can resist. Princess Sutsuki said coldly in Uchiha Itachi's ear. Uchiha Itachi slowly opened his eyes, and he motioned Princess Sutsuki to look forward. Princess Sutsuki was stunned, then turned her head to look. She saw that the 3 incense sticks in front of her had burned out. I passed the test. You can do whatever you want. Uchiha Itachi said with a smile. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.